Jordan Peterson spoke at Liberty University, and during his Q&A portion, New Testament scholar Gary Habermas began to really press him on his beliefs on the resurrection of Jesus, which prompts an interesting discussion and response out of Peterson. We're going to let this clip play out, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the back end so we can have a discussion about it. Let's get into it.
1 year ago, last Easter, somebody sent me a posting from one of your postings, and it included an article that I wrote, a really brief one on the resurrection. And you made a comment there. You said, not the article, but the topic. You said, this may be the most important topic I've ever considered. Had you been thinking about that for a long time, or, this Easter question, the center of Christianity?
The sticking point, I would say, with the atheist community and the Christian community, let's say, I don't really think is the existence of God. That's a sticking point, and it's not trivial. But I think the true sticking point is the idea of the bodily resurrection of Christ, right? And that's a very rough sticking point, because it's key to Christianity, and it flies in the face of the standard materialist objective view of the world. And so it's something that I wrestle with continually. And I think that's okay. I mean, one of the things I learned, I love this. I did a series of biblical lectures in 2017, and one of the things I learned, and I should have known this before, but I didn't, was that the word Israel, the name Israel, means he who wrestles with God. And so that the chosen people, the people of Israel, are people who wrestle with God. And I do think that is the sign of a life that's being lived properly, because if God is the source of meaning, let's say, among other things, the source of significance, the source of purpose, and the place where answers might conceivably emerge. It is a wrestling, if you're honest, because no one knows enough to be certain of anything in some sense. And what you do as you pursue the adventure of your life, if you do pursue it, is to wrestle with those questions of ultimate meaning. And the positive element of the idea that it's those who wrestle that are already the chosen people it's such a lovely idea, because it means that despite our doubt, which is inevitable, I believe, the fact that we're willing to contend with that doubt and to move forward in our lives already puts us on the right track. And so that's a lovely thing. Well, with the resurrection, it's an issue that I wrestle with continually, because there's so much in the New Testament that is profound beyond comprehension. I mean, you see this in the biblical writings in general, like the story of Cain and Abel, for example. It's 10 sentences. It's some fragment of a story. It's not even a full paragraph, and it's infinitely deep. You could study that story and analyze it for your entire life and never get to the bottom of it. It's a real miracle that a story like that can exist. And there are statements in the New Testament that are like that. They're so surprising. You see that in the Sermon on the Mount in particular, but not only there, that are so surprising that it's almost impossible to understand how they could have come about from the standard scientific materialist perspective, say. But the claim is so overwhelming and also so mysterious that I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of the idea of the physical resurrection. It's complicated conceptually right within the confines of the Gospels themselves. I don't know what it means metaphysically. I understand what it means symbolically, and that's usually the approach I take, given that I'm a psychologist. I mean, I do believe that the part of the human being that leads us to redemption is the part of us that dies when it's in error and is reborn as something better and new. And I think that's true practically and scientifically and metaphysically. It's true at every level of existence. But I also don't know what it would mean to live that way fully. You know, if you were fully awake to your errors and fully taking advantage of every opportunity that was put before you and fully devoted to the good, to the highest good that you could conceptualize, I have no idea what the limit of transformation might be for a human being, because we're very mysterious creatures in a very mysterious world.
At lunch, he'll get you clear on the resurrection. All right, okay. All right.
Okay, so there's his response, a pretty good nugget of information, but there's a little bit more context to this. So 1 year after he was questioned at Liberty University, he went on his own show and was pressed about this a little bit further. And Jordan Peterson, he gets rather emotional talking about the resurrection of Jesus. So I'm going to let that clip play out, and then we're going to give the thoughts in the back end. Let's get into it.
The difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to, that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too, partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
You can really tell that Jordan Peterson's a guy who has a lot of heart. It's not just all of his brain up there, which I really respect. But even so, he still has so much knowledge of God, and it's pretty wild. And he probably knows more about the Bible than most Christians do. But I think that too much focus on the symbolism around Christ misses the point that the Gospels, they're really supposed to be treated as a historical narrative of the life, death, resurrection, and teachings of Jesus, and not just as these lessons to live a moral life. When skepticism becomes over-analytical, like in the case of Jordan Peterson here, it can prevent them from coming to faith on a personal, emotional level, and can cause them to neglect the intuitive and emotional nature of being in a relationship with God. And I don't know if this is exactly the case for Jordan Peterson here, but what I see with this hyper intellectualism comes a sense of pride and arrogance, and that is one of the biggest things that I see keeping people from God, myself included. And Jesus says that unless we come to him in humility like a child, that we will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So if pride is a barrier between you and God, now is the time to let go of it and seek God's grace and mercy. Because remember, it was Satan's pride that led to his rebellion against God. And that being said, like, it's okay to have doubts at times. And a healthy amount of skepticism is a good thing to have. It's well accepted. The Bible says, come, let us reason together. And we're called to love the Lord our God with all of our heart and mind. So I think he wants us to look at this and do exactly that and use our mind. So real quick, we're going to look at 4 pieces of evidence about the historical resurrection of Jesus. And so the first one is the historical accounts, including those in the Gospels, that attest to Jesus' tomb being empty after the 3 days. And the next one being multiple people and groups that had appearances of the risen Christ come down to them, and they were willing to testify to this in front of the Roman governors and different people and be crucified and persecuted, singing with joy, being burned alive. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily prove that they really saw the risen Christ, but it at least really shows that they really thought they did, because human psychology says that a person wouldn't die for something that they know to be a lie. And finally, any attempts that are currently being made to explain away the resurrection, to explain away the empty tomb, like the swoon theory that Jesus, he didn't actually die, but that he was really close to death and he came back out of the tomb, or the stolen body theory that the disciples stole it, or maybe somebody from Rome stole it. None of these theories can even hold up to the substantial amount of evidence supporting the bodily resurrection of Jesus in a historical case. And so in light of all of this, I think Jordan Peterson is a very smart man, and I really respect him, but do not fall into the trap of overanalyzing the Gospels metaphysically in this way like he's doing here, because the Bible says the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. So if you earnestly wish to seek the truth, I really recommend you read the Gospel of John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke as a historical narrative and examine Jesus' life, his teachings, his death, his resurrection, and all the like. And if not, I at least recommend you watch the video on screen that appears right about here. Have a great day. Bye-bye.